secret that the US media displays a pretty serious one-sided bias when it comes to Israel-Palestine, and there's all sorts of theories as to why. Many of them have a lot of weight to it. But what I found in my research is that quite a lot of the most prestigious and influential people in America's newsrooms actually used to work for the Israeli government, and specifically in Israeli military intelligence in a notorious group called Unit 8200. Now, chief of those is Axios's Barak Ravid, who this year actually won the prestigious White House Press Correspondents' Dinner Award for the best journalism of 2024. And at that ceremony, he was embraced by Joe Biden. There were speeches given about how wonderful his reporting is and how precise and how much of an insider he is.
The Aldo Beckman Award for Overall Excellence in White House Coverage, named for a former association president, the late Chicago Tribune correspondent Aldo Beckman, goes to Barak Ravid of Axios. The judges said Barak Ravid's reporting displayed deep, almost intimate levels of sourcing in the United States and abroad that produced stories closely aligned to the events that subsequently transpired. His stories put the reader into the room as decisions were being made in the tumultuous aftermath of the October 7th Hamas-led raids on Israel. Ladies and gentlemen, the WHCA is pleased to give the Aldo Beckman Award to Barak Ravid.
Now, Ravid, if you look at his articles in Axios, he's probably the chief person who pushes this Biden is getting really sick with Israel. Biden is distancing himself from Netanyahu stuff that we've heard for more than 12 months now, without any real consequences happening. Biden, of course, said, if Israel goes into Rafah, that's the last straw. We're not supporting them after that. Well, Israel went to Rafah and much further, and the Biden administration is still there. So Ravid is an Israeli, but more importantly, he was, until at least 2023, a member of Unit 8200, which is an Israeli military spying organization. In 2023, he very publicly said he would no longer serve there after Netanyahu overstepped his mark, going after the opposition in Israel. Now, who are Unit 8200? They are Israel's most elite and perhaps most notorious military unit. Unit 8200 are responsible for cyber warfare, for clandestine operations, and for many of the most infamous incidents that we've seen in the past few years in the world of spying and intelligence, including the Lebanese pager attack, which killed many people and injured thousands of civilians. And ex-Unit 8200 agents were behind the Pegasus scandal, this software that was used to spy on tens of thousands of politicians, academics, journalists, activists all around the world, including the Washington Post Jamal Khashoggi, who the Saudi authorities were using Pegasus with permission from the Israeli government to spy on this guy, and then they dismembered him with a bone saw. So Unit 8200 is really the centerpiece of Israel's surveillance state. It is a daily reality for Palestinians that they are thrown into this massive dragnet of surveillance where their faces are being recorded constantly, where their every movement is being tracked, their texts, their calls with their relatives. All of this is being put into a huge Unit 8200 database. And this information is being used by this group to dredge up huge amounts of compromise on Palestinians. So, for example, if you are secretly a homosexual or if you are cheating on your spouse, Unit 8200 will know because they've got the receipts, and they will use that to influence you and try to turn you into an informant against your comrades and your neighbors and your relatives. Not only that, Unit 8200 is the centerpiece of the very, very controversial Lavender software, which assigns a score of between 1 and 100 to any Palestinian in Gaza. And the higher the number you are, the more likely they are in in their estimation, for you to be a Hamas supporter, a Hamas sympathizer, or a Hamas operative. And if your number goes above a certain level, you are automatically put on a kill list that Unit 8200 used, this AI-generated kill list in Gaza, to target tens of thousands of civilians in Gaza and turn that place into the world's biggest smoldering parking lot. So this is who Unit 8200 are. And there are a number of these former Unit 8200 journalists working in the United States. Ravid is one of them, but CNN also employs a number of them. For example, Shachar Khaled, she spent 3 years as an officer in Unit 8200, leading a team of analysts in surveillance, intelligence, and cyber warfare. And then in 2017, she was hired as a producer for CNN to write segments for big shows like Christine Amanpour's show, like Fareed Zakaria's show. And then she later went on to work for Google. Another Unit 8200 operative who went to work for CNN is Tal Heinrich. She spent 3 years as a Unit 8200 agent, and then she became the news desk producer at CNN's Jerusalem bureau, where she actually produced and oversaw the news about Operation Protective Edge, which was the last time Israel started attacking Gaza. And so tens of millions, maybe hundreds of millions of Americans would have seen content produced by Tal Heinrich, who I will remind you is a former Israeli spy, that is being, sent to huge numbers of people all around the world as supposedly objective, factual reporting, when it is anything but. And it goes, beyond this. Of course, last year, I know you're aware of this, the New York Times hired Anat Schwartz, this ex-Israeli Air Force intelligence official who had zero journalistic experience. And she was brought into the Times so that she could report this ridiculous Screams Without Words dossier, which was almost immediately debunked by people in independent media. And it was so free of actual evidence about Hamas committing atrocities against women on October 7th that it actually caused something of an internal revolt at the New York Times. So yeah, it is really extraordinary that people like this are allowed to just get jobs in a hyper-competitive industry. And we in the West have sort of been trained to see Israel as just like this sort of neutral state. Being in the Israeli military isn't, a problem. But I would ask anyone watching this to think, what if this was ex-officers in Russia's FSB or in Hezbollah intelligence? Would we think that was just normal for them to be working at CNN or the New York Times? I think the answer is no.
Yeah, this is really incredible. I read your piece kind of alongside this recent piece from Adam Johnson and Othman Ali from December 18th in The Nation, titled How Sunday Morning News Shows Promote an Anti-Palestinian Agenda for Washington. And they did an analysis of the content on these shows: Meet the Press, ABC's This Week with George Stephanopoulos, Face the Nation, State of the Union at CNN. And they found that with the exception of one interview, Sunday news shows covered and debated the so-called Israel-Hamas war for 12 months without speaking to a single Palestinian or Palestinian American. With one exception, for a year, none of the major Sunday news shows even spoke to a Palestinian. On the other hand, on the other side of things, you're describing to me institutionally, an institutional reality that so many of the people who are writing and producing segments for these major programs aren't just Israeli or aren't just people who might, for other reasons, be sympathetic to Israel and have their own bias, but were in fact Israeli spies who operated within one of the most polarizing, I would argue, toxic segments of the Israeli military.
Yeah, absolutely. Listen, there's no surprise to most people who've been following this.
We are very grateful and fortunate to be joined this morning by Dr. Mohammed Khalil. He is an American doctor based in Texas, a surgeon actually, who has just returned from his second trip to Gaza and wanted to share with us and our audience what he experienced there and his concerns based on what his colleagues are continuing to tell him are happening there on the ground. Doctor, great to see you, great to meet you, and thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, of course. So just tell us a little bit about the context of your visit and some of the things that you saw there operating on the ground.
Yeah, so I went with a humanitarian group into Gaza. I had actually been there the first time in April at European General Hospital, and saw a lot of lower extremity injuries. A lot of I think we signed this letter to the New York Times about all the sniper shots that we saw in children. A lot of targeted attacks as well as indiscriminate bombing. This time I went up north in November to the Ali Hospital, which, if you remember, was the first hospital that was attacked. And there was a lot of questions as to whether a hospital would be attacked by the Israeli military. And this experience was completely different. Just a lot of death and destruction. We did, quite a bit of operating orthopedic surgery. Just as a lot of stabilizing fractures, and unfortunately, in this setting there were a lot of amputations. Just a ton of blast injuries up north, though. It's a very different type of warfare. You can't shake the feeling that the North is almost a testing ground for technological warfare. We saw a number of drones that were dropping bombs, and then off the back of those drones, they've got quadcopters that come down and shoot anything that's left moving. We had a number of children telling us that they would just have to lay there after an explosion so that they wouldn't move and get shot. I think there's a lot of a sense that this is, very much kind of utter destruction. What I would say is in April, we saw a genocide. In November, it just seemed like a full-on Holocaust. Everything is destroyed up north. There's really barely any buildings left that are standing. And the ones that are partially destroyed, and people are trying to live in those in a makeshift environment.
What can you tell us about how you saw the ratio of civilians? Obviously, this is very hard. Civilians to combatants. You're not interrogating people when you're treating them, but in terms of like women and children that you saw, what do you make of the Israeli line that they are, this is a defensible ratio of civilians to combatants?
We did not see anyone that you could clearly identify was a combatant. I assume that they're probably seeking help in other environments, because pretty much everyone that we treated was a non-combatant. A number of them were actually family members of the medical providers in the hospital. I know one of the nurses that was working with us in the OR, his brother, his entire family. Most of them were dead, but a few people survived, and we saw them in the ER. And this was in the middle of the night, and then the next morning, that nurse was back in the OR with us, just getting back to work. And it really is. If somebody was a combatant, I assume they were seeking help in other locations, because pretty much the majority of people that we treated were children, women, or known family members of people that we were working with.
Doctor, what do people, what hope are they holding on to? Because, at this point, like, just for me personally, I feel like there was a huge college protest movement in terms of the U.S. context, like that didn't move the needle. There was some hope that perhaps Biden and Harris could be pressured in some way. That obviously didn't move the needle. Now you have an incoming administration that, has long been very hostile, basically long done what, the Israelis have wanted them to do. So what do people want us to know, and what hope are they hanging on to at this point?
It depends on who you ask. So, when we were meeting with one of the guys that does run the morgue, and he gets a lot of the, their bodies to prepare and then bury. He's a very upbeat guy and was joking around and very social. And one of our teammates asked him, give us a message of hope for the people out in the world. And he's like, what hope? There is no hope. We're all going to die. We just have to do our best while we're here. And it's very humbling to hear someone as upbeat as that saying something like that. But then, on the flip side, whenever the election results got announced, everyone's kind of joking in the OR and in the courtyard of the hospital. One of the nurses' daughters was killed, and so his other daughter and sons were playing by the because they bury everybody in the courtyard or right outside the hospital. It's just graves as far as you can see. And this, one of the nurse's sons is a teenager, and he was just like, he's like, you're going to meet Trump? He's like, if you see Trump, tell him Gaza is not just going to free Palestine, it's going to free the whole world. I think there's this sense that even though Trump, one of the doctors was like, oh, Trump has a son-in-law that's Lebanese, maybe he's going to be a little more favorable. I think the general sense is that even though, Trump has been pretty derogatory in the way that he's talked about Palestinians, I think the thought is that you can't really appeal to his humanitarian side, but you might be able to at least appeal to his ego to not look subservient to Netanyahu and Israeli leadership in perpetuity. I mean, I think on the Kamala Harris and Biden side, there just seemed to be no light at the end of the tunnel in terms of them ever standing up to, what was being done in Israel, even if it violates our own laws. But with Trump, perhaps you can count on his ego eventually taking over.
Dr. Khalil, thank you so much for spending some time with us. And thank you so much again for the work that you do, which to me is unimaginable, your level of personal courage and ethics and morality to go and put yourself in such a difficult and dangerous situation. So we're really grateful. Is there anything else you want to share or anywhere you want people to go to follow what's happening on the ground?
Yeah, no, I think I appreciate you saying that. I mean, when there's I've never felt the feeling of survivor's guilt before, but this is something that you get you really hits home when you're leaving Gaza, and I think as much as we as much as it may take, kind of putting your fears to the side to go there, you're just humbled by how brave the people that are there actually are. Like, I mean, they literally tell you, they won't even tell you the number of family members that they've lost unless you ask them. And then they take it so well and then continue to work to help people even without pay, like in the hospital. And it's
unimaginable.
It's truly unimaginable. And I think anything that all I can tell people is, if the money and donations, if you can find organizations like, World Central Kitchen, Rama, keep donating. But the biggest thing is, I think, speaking up. Like, I don't know how long this can continue to happen, but at some point it's got to stop. And I think a lot of the attention on this has been diverted now after a year of this going on. It's kind of hard to keep focused on it. But I would say just, anyone who's got an interest, please just keep educating people.
Doctor, thank you so much, and Happy New Year to you as well.
Yeah, thank you guys.
Hey, if you like that video, hit the like button or leave a comment below. It really helps get the show to more people.
And if you'd like to get the full show ad-free and in your inbox every morning, you can sign up at breakingpoints.com.
That's right. Get the full show, help support the future of independent media at breakingpoints.com.
Both men were in the military. You have Leibelsberger, a Green Beret, and you have Jabbar, who was in the military for more than a decade, now a military veteran. Talk about what took place on New Year's, Mike.
Right. Well, both of these incidents and individuals seem quite different, other than the fact that both of them seem to be triggered by relationship issues. But the main thing that links them is the fact that military service is now the #1 predictor of becoming what is called a mass casualty offender, surpassing even mental health issues as a profiler. There are many different consequences of having a massive military empire, the biggest humanity has ever seen, both in its sheer size, its expanse around the world, one that is constantly engaged in endless and morally indefensible wars around the world. And one of those consequences is the violence abroad coming back against people at home. Leibelsberger, of course, his career was one of killing. And then, the New Orleans attacker says he was inspired by ISIS. The mass killing ideology of ISIS. ISIS would not exist were it not for the U.S. military's complete destruction of Iraq and mass killing of innocent people. America in general, of course, has a mass violence problem. Mass shootings happen quite regularly, more than once a day on average. And that the reasons for that are linked to U.S. militarism, both in that kind of cultural domination of a country that glorifies violence and exports violence, but more so a government that is presiding over a country with deep and extreme social problems, which it refuses to address while having a blank and endless check for militarism abroad and an ever-increasing budget for the military-industrial complex. And so this gives rise to an extreme amount of social problems in our society that are rooted in things like alienation and inequality and desperation and despair and hopelessness. And then so the U.S. military comes in and for the purposes of recruitment must target people who are most impacted by those social problems. They bring them into an institution where they train them to kill. They train them that killing is actually quite honorable and quite cool. It sends many of those people to kill abroad. It has a very notorious for ruining people's mental health and a mental health system that makes people's mental health problems even worse, and then spits them back out into a society where people find their lives harder than when they joined.
And then you also have to ask the other obvious question. If he just shot himself, then how did he subsequently detonate the vehicle? Now, you can say, well, he had a timer. Maybe he had a timer, with a delay, he hit that and then fired. That's theoretically possible. Certainly it is. But there's no evidence that he used a timer. There's no evidence. In fact, they haven't talked at all about that. So that's one thing that we should zero in on, and we should take a look. And you've already seen some of these pictures where they laid out all the charred remains of all this stuff. You saw he also had a rifle. There were two weapons. One was the Desert Eagle 50 caliber pistol, which allegedly was in the front seat, which is what he allegedly used to shoot himself with. Then there's also a kind of an AR style weapon. And that they showed, at least I've seen one picture of that, and it's very charred, almost melted in some places. It's just really badly damaged. But his phone survived. His phone continued to be able to be so good that they could pull the chip off and open it up. And how did they get it to? Nearly everybody these days has password protected anyway. It's just hard for me to imagine that phone would have been recoverable immediately. And then these images come out of what he took on there. Now, we'll have to wait and see on that too. This is all evolving. So let me caveat this. Perhaps they'll say later on that, oh, well, no, actually he sent that text message to X, Y, and Z and we pulled it off the internet, or we pulled it off the cloud or something like that. So I'll leave some room that's possible, but at least what's been reported so far is very, very suspect. But now I'm going to drill into one of the parts that I think that completely obliterates this claim that he shot himself and then detonated. Now, there is one angle of this. That's it right there. Yeah. Now you tell me a brand new weapon is going to get charred to that degree that Gary's showing there, but his phone is easily able to pull off text messages. Well, you can make your own choices there, or your own decisions there. And then his ID card is just a little bit melted. His passport, which was in there, almost completely untouched. So hard to reconcile those things, the evidence that we're being told is the case here when you see the other. But we'll leave that there. That's questionable. This part, however, is not questionable. Now, this is the explosion. If you can back that up. Okay, here's the explosion from this certain angle. This is one of the most important piece of evidences that's out there. This is from the side, and you can see this is from the driver's side. Most of these others you've seen from various different angles. Now, if you look very close, freeze that right there for Gary. Freeze that right at that point. Just about there. Freeze. Now, if from this video here, you can see this is the driver's side. Now, if you look carefully into the window, you can see where the driver's head is. You can see his hair, his face, his shoulders, the back of the chair, all that stuff you can see. Now, I have taken some screenshots out of this, and let me show you a series of them. Gary, if you can put that first one up there. This is the first image I'm going to show you here is pulled off that video, and it's right before the explosion happens. And so if you look carefully in there, and now go to the second one there, you can see clearly that there's his head. His shoulder is right there where that arrow is pointing, and then you can see kind of perpendicular the seat back. So this shows a person normally sitting in a vehicle from the angle you would expect. Then go to the next picture. Now, this is the instant of the explosion. This is where things start to go sideways. In this picture right here, you can see that the explosion starts in the passenger or in the driver's seat. So this must have initiated right underneath him. It didn't initiate in the back where allegedly there was some gas canisters and lots of fireworks, etc. It initiated right there in the front seat. So let's take a look there and now go to the next image here. Let me show you what you can see very clearly now. You can definitely see his face is illuminated very clear. You can see his ear there right at the end of that arrow, his face, his nose, his hairline. You can see all that. You can see the steering wheel, obviously very well illuminated in that. The next clip there, Gary, if you can go to the next one. Yeah. So you can see that is clear as can be. It's like with this light going on. This is right before, as the explosion happens. Do you see any evidence that this person had already been killed, had already been dead? If he had shot himself with the weapon that they claim was in the front seat, there would be no head. I'm sorry to be graphic, but there would be no head on the body. It would have been vaporized. You would have seen exiting the vehicle, the bullet. It would have come out there. It's impossible with that much power. It could have been contained within the vehicle. It would have penetrated the vehicle and gone out after it went through his head. But you see none of that here. And then the next video, I think there's one more, isn't there, Gary? Or is that the last one? That may be the last one. Yeah, because then you have this huge explosion. But that's what would have happened. But now then here we have this image, and Gary, go back to the last image that we had on there. This proves 100% clearly that this person was not dead before the explosion. That because even if it was a regular weapon and he just killed himself, then obviously he would have been slumped forward. His head would have been on the wheel. You can't stay upright after you've shot yourself. It's physically impossible. So now then that leaves us with, what has happened now? What's going to go on? What's going to the result of this point? Because if what we're being told over and over is he shot himself, and yet here very clearly he didn't, then what are we to make of what else we're being told? Now, this another one here, this comment also from an FBI when they're talking about the nature of the explosion itself. Watch this.
I'll tell you, it does appear that it was, I just want to be careful with my language here, but the level of sophistication is not what we would expect from an individual with this type of military experience. That most of that, the materials inside that Tesla were fuel to help fuel a greater explosion. But it's too early to answer any question as if there was sophisticated connectivity to those components to make it ignite in the way that it did.
So you see there that here's an explosive expert saying, it just seems a little odd that this guy who was a 19-year Special Forces veteran, who had been through multiple Afghan deployments and apparently several other operational deployments elsewhere, knew explosives inside and out, was really good at his craft, would not even know how to put together an effective vehicle-borne explosive device. Why would that be? Why would he not be able to do that? And then like all these things in the back, this fireworks and all this other kind of stuff, they weren't even connected. But then allegedly, what these folks are expecting you to believe is that even though it was really unsophisticated, apparently he must have had a really sophisticated triggering mechanism so that he could shoot himself and have set the timer off so that it would go off after he was dead. And then that's another thing you got to look at that. Going back to that video or that picture there, if you have set an explosive device in the front seat of your vehicle, that one right there. So that's where it is. Now, tell me, what possible reason would you have to say, hey, before this bomb goes off in my lap, I'm going to shoot myself first? There's no reason to do that. There's no need to do that. You're going to be evaporated when that bomb goes off. So it seems kind of odd that you would, quote, shoot yourself first and then the bomb goes off. So you see, none of this stuff matches up with this guy. He says he's trying to get to Mexico. He says he has some explosive information he wants to get into the media. Then all of a sudden he kills himself and allegedly shoots himself and blows himself up inside of a vehicle that he knows good and well is very powerfully put together so that if you have an explosive device, that most of it is going to be contained within that vehicle. I think there's some famous footage out there. I think it was Elon Musk himself when he announced this thing, threw like an iron ball or something like that at the glass window. It was supposed to have bounced off. It cracked, but it, showed how strong this vehicle was. And it's something that can really contain a lot of explosive power. So if you know a lot about making explosives, if you know about how to make a vehicle bomb, and then you're going to use a small amount of explosive, which will mostly be contained because allegedly, according to the official story here, is that he didn't want to commit terrorism. He didn't want to kill anybody. He just wanted to make a message. Well, obviously, you could have done that anywhere. And why go to the Trump hotel? I mean, he's a Trump supporter. By all accounts, this guy was positive to Trump support. So if you just want notoriety, why would you drive from Colorado all the way to Las Vegas to get in front of this hotel? I mean, you just say none of this stuff makes any sense at all. And yet that's what we're asking for. But you look at all of the media. The media today, are they saying anything about whatever allegedly happened in 2019? Are they talking about anything about these drones? Are we doing any more investigations into them? They're not talking about any of that stuff. They're just saying he definitely committed suicide. He definitely had emotional issues, and trust us on this. We got this stuff off his phone, even though he didn't send it to anyone else or talk to anyone else in his sphere. But he left this neutral note in a place that shouldn't have even been able to be discovered. So what's wrong with that story? You see what I'm saying here? Listen, our government has done so many things that has caused a lot of doubt and a lot of questions about things, and we don't know. There's too many things, that we do know that turned out to be not true later on. So there's been poll after poll for many years now that shows that America's trust in government keeps going down, down, down. And some of these things are the reason why. Now, as I said, and I'm sorry to beat this dead horse, but I just have to be clear that we're barely, 2 days into this. So there's so much we don't know, and a lot of this is swirling around. But folks, listen, when the officials are emphatically telling you he shot himself with a huge caliber pistol that they recovered, and then you see with your own eyes, there he is, plain as day, not shot before that thing goes off, then you have to say, what else are y'all not telling us? What else are you telling us that isn't true? I mean, that shot right there is the money shot. You can't get past that. It is as illuminated as it could be. There is the driver. He is fully upright. He has not been shot. His head is still on his shoulders. So, and I believe I've seen some reports that also say, well, because it was this is what they claim happened to him, that now then there's no dental records. They can't do that kind of analysis. But you see on the picture there, you can't get away from it. That is a fact that his head was still intact and it had not been shot. So that's something that's going to have to be answered. And I'm going to be looking to get any kind of information on that. I do ask you, more than I ordinarily do, share this video. Even take some screenshots of this yourself. Send them out there. I'm going to be tweeting this out myself because these are some questions that must be asked. And I'll be real interested to hear how these are reconciled with what you're claiming, what you're telling me is information, with what we can see with our own eyes. We'll have to keep following this. Listen, that's all that we have for you today. We're going to continue to follow this. And if we get any more information like this, we'll certainly share it with you. But I'll just tell you that some of this stuff is disturbing to me. And, let's not just focus on what the media is telling us here, but let's look at what he did say, that we have an authoritative answer, that he did bring up a couple of issues. Those deserve some focus as well. And I'd like to see the media focus on those too, to find out, is this true? Did we commit a war crime in 2019 and cover it up? And if so, who did it? Don't let this be another one of those things where we find out some information of something that was done illegally and we violated our own laws, and then no one suffered any consequences. And now then they've continued to go on to lucrative positions or whatever. If somebody did that, we need an investigation. We need to find out, and we need to hold them accountable. And if there is something else going on with this, with these drone issues, whether there's some kind of new technology or whether it's the Chinese using something else or whether it's not, we need to find out. That's something that Americans need to know about. We deserve to know about that. And we're going to continue following this so that you do know. Folks, we are unintimidated, uncompromised. We will tell you the truth, whatever we know at the time. And if future evidence comes out that contradicts any of these suppositions, we'll bring that to you as well, because you deserve the truth. Thank you very much. I appreciate your time. Just a kind of a quick reminder here, we're going to have a great show on Monday. We have Aidan Minnis back on the show. He is a former British citizen who has joined the Russian army. He's going to give the view from the Russian side of what's happening on some of the on the Eastern Front there. We hear a lot about what's happening on the Ukraine side, but the Western media almost never tells anything about the other side. So that you can understand a balanced view of what's happening, we're going to show the other side on Monday. Be sure and tune in then, and we'll see you on the next episode of Daniel Davis TV.
But the biggest twist came this morning when a woman claiming to be a reporter posted a video from inside the house where the suspect allegedly lived. You only have to watch the video to understand a bigger conspiracy. An overwhelming majority of social media users is calling it staged, but I will let you make up your own mind. Just keep an eye on a few things to understand the dirty design. What kind of reporter turns up to report on a so-called terrorist attack which has killed more than 14 people in yoga pants? Also, how on earth do you get access to the house of a so-called terrorist so soon after an attack that has killed 14 people? Wouldn't you expect the investigating agency, which is the FBI in this case, to seal the house and preserve the forensic evidence? That is, if you are serious about your claims. She then lays special emphasis on Quran and Islamic books. She even identifies prayer rug, which even a devout Muslim wouldn't be able to identify. The camera then zooms on a copy of the Holy Quran, which is left open. Ask any Muslims in your friend circle if they can leave the Holy Book of Quran open. It's simply not how Muslims treat their holy book. This propagandist from NYPost then keeps repeating the presence of chemicals, but you can't see any of them in the video. Her camera then pauses on Palestinian kafir. Now watch the video and make up your own mind on whether this was staged or not.
We are here inside the New Orleans terrorist home. You can see that it's been clearly destroyed, the door at least, from the FBI raid yesterday. But if we walk through the home, we see some signs of what he was up to. He had this work area here, lots of different chemicals splayed around, and different electronics. This is, again, a work setup. Left receipts, just very unkempt in here. If we go over here, actually, you can see the Department of Justice documents here, the search warrant, and the property that they recorded here, which seems to be a lot of chemicals. Again, just left in disarray. There's a bedroom back here, and what appears to be his collection of religious materials, his Qurans, an open Quran with a passage there, as well as even the Bible here, but mostly books on Islam, and his prayer rug just to the left of me here. And if we go back, there's another bedroom here. You can see he left all these belongings, contact lenses, personal belongings, his bathroom. This seems to be some sort of workspace, again, with other chemicals here. The light's still on, some kind of station set up here. We're not really sure what that was for. In, what we can assume was also a bedroom. You can see clothes left here, and just a sign that someone was here up until those last few moments when neighbors said he left just before the New Year's holiday, saying he was done with his lease, it was up, and he was on his way to New Orleans where he would live there. Didn't take any furniture because he said his new home would be furnished. That's all we know so far.
Let's be absolutely clear here. the US government has used the bogey of ISIS to pursue their colonial agenda or hide their crimes against humanity. If they were serious about fighting the ISIS, how come they have removed the $10 million bounty from Abu Muhammad al-Julani's head? How come this once brutal terrorist is now a great friend of America? Recent developments from Syria and the wider Middle East have truly exposed the hypocrisy of the US administration and their links with ISIS. They're lying when they say that they are against ISIS. They created ISIS with the help of Israel to expand their terrorist agenda across the Middle East, but defame Islam and Muslims in the process. That's the reality. So the man allegedly responsible for the New Orleans attack was an ex-US soldier. Then the man responsible for the explosion in a Tesla Cybertruck outside a Trump hotel was also a US soldier. Both are dead now and not alive to defend themselves. Meanwhile, the army of the Western propaganda machinery has been deployed to peddle the ISIS narrative. These narratives have been unleashed on us at a time when the critics of the Israeli terrorism for their war crimes in Gaza and against the H-1B visa were gaining momentum on social media. Now suddenly, everyone is talking about the ISIS, and Elon Musk, who owns Twitter, has pushed all his energy on the grooming gangs in the UK. Just go to his timeline to understand how this thug is digging up several years old story to divide the British society along the ethnic lines. He clearly wants to create unrest in the UK as he did during the Southport attack last year. But the question is, why is the UK government led by Zionist Keir Starmer and his gang tolerating Elon Musk's dangerous move? I'm not surprised why people are leaving Elon Musk's toxic social media platform. Not that I'm a fan of BBC journalism anymore, but this thug called Elon Musk had reacted angrily when a BBC representative accused him of turning Twitter into a platform which promotes hate speech. Had the BBC chap done a little bit of research, he would have been able to silence Musk. But on this occasion, he had allowed him to project himself as some kind of free speech messiah. Anyway, that's it from me. Thank you very much for your support of this platform and our journalism on buymeacoffee.com and Patreon. If you too think that our journalism is worth supporting, then you too should consider becoming part of it. In the meantime, if you haven't subscribed to my channel, please do so, because that's one of the many ways you can support independent journalism. God bless you all.
Obviously, there are two ongoing wars, serious, dangerous, bloody, costly wars that the United States is funding with billions of dollars, not just funding, but heavily involved in operationally. One of them is the war in Gaza, waged by Israel, financed by the Biden administration, armed by the Biden administration, diplomatically protected by the Biden administration. It's now going on for a year and 3 months, no end in sight. By all accounts, it has been the worst humanitarian war in decades. Not just in terms of the number of civilians is killed, the number of children is killed, but the destruction of all civilian infrastructure, making Gaza basically inhabitable, ethnic cleansing, mass starvation, deliberate campaigns of hunger, collective punishment. It's a historically sickening war waged by Israel. And Trump has said he wants it to end, but what that means is unclear, because he is, if nothing else, the one thing all of his appointees have in common is that they are fanatical Israel supporters, from RFK Jr. and Tulsi Gabbard, Pete Hegseth, to Marco Rubio and Elise Stefanik, Mike Huckabee, every single one of them. There's not a peep of dissent on Israel, not in the Secretary of Agriculture, not in the Secretary of Interior or Labor. And one of his biggest donors, his biggest one, in fact, after Elon Musk, which was Miri Madelshin. We did a whole show on her. Her only issue, the only one she cares about, is having the U.S. do everything possible to support Israel and all of its aspirations. And that doesn't just include destroying Gaza, but also expanding its territory in the West Bank, annexing it, annexing Gaza, annexing parts of Lebanon, and now parts of Syria as well. Here from Al Jazeera, December 8th, Israel grabs land in Syria's Golan Heights, warned villagers to stay home. Quote, Israel forces also bomb weapons depots in southern Syria and the capital Damascus, Israeli media reports. So just in the last month, Israel has seized major parts of Syria and have proclaimed it to be Israeli territory. So it's an expansionist war, it's a destabilizing war, it's a bloody war, it's a war that's making people in the Middle East hate Israel, hate the United States even more. How Trump handles that, it looks by all accounts that he's going to give the green light to Netanyahu to do anything and everything he wants, which basically is what Biden did as well, will be very significant. Here from the United Nations Human Rights Organization, just to give you a sense for the extremity of what this war has become, Israel's assault on the foundations of international law must have consequences, say UN experts. Quote, indiscriminate attacks, including on shelters for displaced persons and the Kamal Adwan hospital and its vicinity, and the intensification of siege conditions on northern Gaza for the last 3 months run contrary to Israel's legal duty to ensure the protection of the civilian population, the experts said. Quote, we are disturbed with this siege, coupled with expanding evacuation orders, appears intended to permanently displace the local population as a precursor to Gaza's annexation in further violation of international law. So here's Trump, elected on a platform to keep America out of wars that don't directly threaten American territory, saying that we can't continue to fund other people's wars, saying that about the war in Ukraine, but not only not saying that about the war in Israel, but saying that the United States has to do everything it can to advance Israeli interests. He's even threatened Hamas and said, we're going to destroy you if you don't give back the hostages. He's threatened Iran, saying we may have to go and bomb Iran's nuclear facilities. In fact, when Israel was considered bombing Iran, its nuclear facilities or its critical petroleum infrastructure, Trump said, yeah, go ahead and bomb its nuclear infrastructure, despite how obviously risky that is, given Iran's power and reach in the region. Here is Trump on Hugh Hewitt's show in April of 2024, talking about exactly these issues.
Well, that's all the advice you can give. I mean, that's the advice. You got to get it over with, and you have to get back to normalcy. And I'm not sure that I'm loving the way they're doing it, because you got to have victory. You have to have a victory. And it's taking a long time. And the other thing is, I hate they put out tapes all the time. Every night they're releasing tapes of a building falling down. They shouldn't be releasing tapes like that. That's why they're losing the PR war. Israel is absolutely losing the PR war.
That's how I read your interview. I read your interview as saying they're losing the PR war. They've got to stop releasing bad video and win the war by going into Rafah.
They're releasing the most heinous, most horrible tapes of buildings falling down. And people are imagining there's a lot of people in those buildings or people in those buildings. And they don't like it. And I don't know why they release, wartime shots like that. I guess it makes them look tough. But to me, it doesn't make them look tough. They're losing the PR war, and they're losing it big. But they've got to finish what they started, and they got to finish it fast, and we have to get on with life.
So there is certainly a more mixed message than anything Joe Biden or Kamala Harris or their top national security officials were saying. He's clearly irritated with what Israel is doing. He made that very clear. He said it's pretty stupid for these Israeli soldiers and the IDF to constantly post these videos of this sadistic, gratuitous destruction, collapsing residential buildings, putting it on the internet. He's like, they think it makes them look tough. I don't think it makes them look tough. There's a lot of animosity toward Israel there. And he definitely had some personal conflict with Netanyahu, for sure, during his administration. But at the same time, that first administration was probably the most pro-Israel presidency in the history of the United States. Trump himself boasted about that, about how the Adelsons would come to the White House more than anybody else, demand something for Israel. He would give it to them. They'd come right back. They'd demand more. He would give it to them again. And even during the campaign, Trump vowed, when speaking to an American Jewish group, a right-wing Jewish group, he said, we're going to make America great again. We're also going to make Israel great again. Imagine running on a platform of America First and saying, we're going to make this foreign country great again. That's what my administration is going to be about, at least one of the things. And obviously, the people in Israel heard that, because here was a big billboard after Trump won in Jerusalem that was on the front page of of Haaretz, but also other media outlets, that read, quote, "Congratulations, Trump, make Israel great again." And there you see Israel great underneath it, kind of broken out, and then you see the American flag and the Israeli flag merged with pictures of Donald Trump. So there are a lot of major supporters, major contributors of Trump who are expecting him to prioritize the interest of Israel. And notice he's saying, "I want the war over," but he's saying Israel has to go in and end it. Presumably meaning even more destruction. He's saying, "I want the war over with," not in the sense that he wants the Russia-Ukraine war over with. Obviously, no one thinks that war is going to end with the expulsion of Russian troops from Ukrainian soil, but he's saying, "I want it over with," meaning they have to do even more. So it's a very mixed bag. I don't think it can get worse than what the Biden administration was. It might get better. But there's a lot of conflict about the America First ideology and how America is so devoted to the interests of Israel. But I would say the vast majority of his base, not all of it by any means, but the vast majority, both the more traditionalists and the more populists, for a variety of reasons, are just as devoted to Israel as he is. And that seems unlikely to create the kind of internal tensions that other issues, the ones that we've already covered, will. Thanks for watching this clip from System Update, our live show that airs every Monday through Friday at 7 p.m. Eastern, exclusively on Rumble. You can catch the full nightly shows live or view the backlog of episodes for free on our Rumble page. You can also find full episodes the morning after they air across all major podcasting platforms, including Spotify and Apple. All the information you need is linked below. We hope to see you there.
I open up my phone on a Monday morning, staring at my screen. I'm tired and a little lonely. Mr. Muskie says some shit that left so angry. Twitter wars and Gaza, man, it's overwhelming. Maybe that's how life becomes when people less important than a profit line. No one cares about your dreams, just pay your tax on time. Keep scrolling, hold me near to you now. Gender, guns, religion, and abortion rights. You better pick a tribe and hate the other side. Keep scrolling.
Like, did you see Taylor live?
Man-made virus, watch some millions die. Biggest profit of their lives. Here's inflation, that's your prize. This is Karmageddon. Turn on the news and eat their lies. Kim or Kanye, pick a side. Cancel culture, what a vibe. This is Karmageddon. Corporations swear they never lie. Politicians bribe for life. More than war, it's genocide. This is Karmageddon. Welcome to the chaos of the times. If you go left and I go right, pray we make it out alive. This is Karmageddon. It's Fashion Week, celebs lose ribs. Balenciaga, how's the kids? Just as Stray Keys losing beef. Kendrick killed him in his sleep. This track's about beating up your queen. While women dying doesn't cause a scene. While we're fed all these distractions, kids are killed from Israel's actions. I'ma speak my mind. Sick to death of all these crazy lies. A circus for humanity's decline. We just want a peaceful life. Give the people back their rights. And I still got a beef, cause Fauci's laughing and we've been asleep. And who's a liar and it's running deep. Big pharma finna eat. They a devil, make 'em weak. Man-made virus, watch some million